Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the story of a man whose ambition reshaped the Roman world, Gaius Julius Caesar. But we're not starting with him as a dictator. Instead, we're going back to the beginning of his meteoric rise. From his first consulship to the brutal, decade-long conquest of Gaul. This is a story of how a brilliant politician became a legendary general. In 60 BC, Rome was a hotbed of political intrigue. The Republic was creaking under the weight of powerful, ambitious men. Three of these men decided that instead of fighting each other, they would work together. This was the birth of the first triumvirate, a secret, unofficial alliance between Caesar, the immensely wealthy Consul, and the celebrated general Pompey the Great. Caesar, with his popular appeal and political savvy, was the glue that held this powerhouse together. Their goal: to bypass the stubborn Senate and push their own agendas. The first major victory for the triumvirate was Caesar's election as consul in 59 BC. Now, the consulship was the highest office in the Republic. But it was a shared position, and typically, the Senate could keep any one man's power in check. But Caesar was different. He used his position with breathtaking audacity. His co-consul Bibulus tried to oppose his land reform bills, but Caesar's supporters were so aggressive that Bibulus was basically forced to hide in his own home for the rest of the year. This left Caesar in almost complete control, earning the year the nickname the consulship of Julius and Caesar. He pushed through laws that benefited his allies and the common people, cementing his popularity and infuriating the traditionalist senators, known as the Optimates. A consul's term was only 1 year, and Caesar knew that once his term ended, his enemies in the Senate would be waiting to prosecute him for his aggressive and often legally questionable actions. He needed a way to extend his immunity and build his power base. The solution: a proconsular commander governorship of a province. But Caesar didn't want just any province. Through the political maneuvering of the triumvirate, he secured a 5-year command over not one, but 3 provinces: Cisalpine Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, and Illyricum. This gave him control of 4 legions and, crucially, a legal justification to operate north of Italy. This governorship was Caesar's golden ticket. It gave him immunity from prosecution, an army loyal to him, and the opportunity to win military glory and immense wealth. The stage was set. In 58 BC, Julius Caesar marched north, leaving the cutthroat politics of Rome behind for the battlefields of Gaul. He wasn't just a politician anymore. He was about to become a conqueror. So, what was Gaul? It wasn't a single country but a vast territory, covering modern-day France, Belgium, Switzerland, and parts of Germany. It was inhabited by hundreds of different Celtic and Germanic tribes, who were often at war with each other. They were fierce warriors, but they were divided. This division would be their downfall and Caesar's greatest advantage. Caesar's first test came almost immediately in 58 BC. The Helvetii, a large tribe from modern-day Switzerland, decided to migrate en masse across Roman territory. Caesar saw this as both a threat and an opportunity. He raced to Gaul, raised 2 new legions, and confronted them. At the Battle of Baybrecht, Caesar's disciplined legions crushed the Helvetii, forcing the survivors back to their homeland. He had established his dominance with a stunning and brutal victory. But that was just the beginning. The same year, a coalition of Gallic tribes asked for Caesar's help against a powerful Germanic chieftain named Ariovistus, who had crossed the Rhine and was seizing their land. Caesar agreed, but his real aim was to assert Roman power. He marched against Ariovistus and, in a hard-fought battle in the Vosges Mountains, utterly defeated the Germans, driving them back across the Rhine. In a single campaign season, Caesar had defeated 2 major threats and positioned himself as the arbiter of power in Gaul. The Senate in Rome was stunned, voting an unprecedented 15-day Thanksgiving in his honor. The following year, 57 BC, Caesar turned his attention to the Belgae, a powerful confederation of tribes in northern Gaul, who were alarmed by the growing Roman presence. Caesar claimed they were conspiring against him and launched a preemptive strike. This campaign was incredibly tough. At the Battle of the Sabes, the Romans were caught by surprise and nearly overwhelmed by the Nervi, one of the fiercest Belgic tribes. It was a desperate struggle. The legionaries were pushed to their breaking point. It was Caesar himself, grabbing a shield and fighting in the front ranks, who rallied his men and turned the tide of battle. This victory solidified his control over the north and further burnished his reputation as a commander who led from the front. By 56 BC, it seemed as though Gaul was subdued. But back in Rome, the triumvirate was showing signs of strain. Crassus and Pompey were growing jealous of Caesar's spectacular successes. To patch things up, the 3 met at the Lucca conference. They renewed their alliance. Pompey and Crassus would be consuls again, and, most importantly for Caesar, his command in Gaul was extended for another 5 years. With his political back secured, he could finish the job. Caesar then turned to the Atlantic coast, defeating the seafaring Veneti tribe in a brilliant and innovative naval battle. He had his engineers design special grappling hooks to tear down the enemy's sails, crippling their ships. In 55 BC, he pushed the boundaries of the known world. He built a remarkable bridge across the Rhine River in just 10 days to conduct a punitive expedition into Germania, then dismantled it. Later that same year, he launched the first ever Roman invasion of Britain. While these expeditions weren't permanent conquests, they were incredible propaganda victories. A Roman general had crossed the ocean and the Rhine feats that captured the imagination of the people back in Rome. However, the Gauls were far from broken. Their resentment was simmering, and in the winter of 54 to 53 BC, it boiled over. A major revolt erupted, led by Ambiorix of the Eburones tribe. In a cunning ambush, he annihilated an entire Roman legion and 5 cohorts, one of the worst disasters of Caesar's career. The rebellion spread like wildfire. Caesar spent the next year racing across Gaul, putting out fires and inflicting brutal punishments on the rebellious tribes. He was ruthless, often ordering the slaughter of entire populations to make an example of them. The final, decisive chapter of the Gallic Wars came in 52 BC this time. The Gauls found a leader who could finally unite them, Vercingetorix of the Arverni tribe. He was charismatic, intelligent, and a brilliant strategist. He united the tribes of central Gaul and launched a coordinated large-scale rebellion. Vercingetorix understood he couldn't beat the legions in a pitched battle. Instead, he adopted a scorched earth strategy, burning Gallic towns and farms to deny the Roman army supplies. The campaign became a desperate chase, culminating in the legendary siege of Alesia. Vercingetorix and his main army fortified themselves in the hilltop stronghold of Alesia. Caesar arrived and, facing a massive Gallic army inside, did something audacious. He ordered his men to build a massive set of fortifications, a wall of circumvallation encircling the entire town, trapping Vercingetorix inside. But Caesar knew a massive Gallic relief army was coming. So, he ordered his legions to build a second wall of contravallation facing outwards to protect themselves from the coming attack. The Romans were now besieged themselves, trapped between 2 massive Gallic armies. What followed was one of the most epic battles in ancient history. The Romans fought desperately on 2 fronts, repelling attacks from both inside and outside their walls. Once again, at the critical moment, Caesar led a cavalry charge himself, breaking the Gallic relief army and sealing Vercingetorix's fate. Starved into submission, Vercingetorix surrendered in a dramatic ceremony, laying down his arms at Caesar's feet. The Great Gallic Rebellion was over. By 50 BC, after nearly a decade of relentless campaigning, Gaul was conquered. The cost was staggering. Historians estimate that 1 million Gauls died and another 1 million were enslaved. But for Caesar, the rewards were immense. He had a battle-hardened, fanatically loyal army. He had accumulated a personal fortune vast enough to buy the loyalty of half the politicians in Rome, and he had a military reputation that rivaled Alexander the Great. He had transformed from a politician into a living legend. But this triumph set the stage for an even greater conflict. His ally Crassus was dead, killed in a disastrous campaign in the east. His other ally Pompey now saw Caesar not as a partner, but as a rival who had grown far too powerful. The Senate, led by Pompey, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, where they fully intended to prosecute and ruin him. Caesar was at a crossroads, standing with his army on the banks of a small river called the Rubicon, which marked the border of Italy. To cross it with his army would be an act of treason and civil war. What happened next would change the course of history forever, but that's a story for another time. Thanks for watching. The rise of Julius Caesar is one of history's most compelling tales of ambition, genius, and brutality. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Let us know in the comments what part of Caesar's story you find most fascinating. Until next time.